Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. I hope everyone's doing well out there. I wanted to thank you all for joining today and to welcome back Dan Mann from the Mann Group. We have a really great presentation today that's going to get you all geared up for the busy season that's coming. Just a reminder to go ahead and write in questions and comments as we go. Dan will be able to answer those at the end for you. We have saved some time for that, so locate that on the left side of your panel there, and you should see that and be able to write in. And then I also just wanted to let everyone know that we do have some more webinars coming up. Our next webinar is a search engine optimization session, Wednesday, April 24th at 1 p.m. So just keep that on your calendar. We have lots of opportunities for you all to get some education. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dan for today's webinar.
Thanks, Hillary, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're sitting in front of your screen. It's so nice to join the group, and I can see even now more and more people are joining. So thanks for sitting in today, and I know it's tough to take some time off of your busy schedule and invest in yourself, but hey, congratulations for doing that. As I sit in Asheville and look over the beautiful mountains today, and in my home office, it is a spectacular spring day, and it does get me in the mood for what's coming. So hopefully you're enjoying some great weather. I think if you're out in the Midwest, you may be rolling your eyes at me right now. From what I understand, the weather may not be so good, but let me just tell you, it's great on the East Coast today. So the reason we're on our webinar today is not to talk about weather, however, as we talk about leading change and team building. And this is a passionate topic for us here at the Mann Group, and I know it's important for you because as you ramp up for the season and get ready for your business, getting the right team together and getting the team doing the right things is the real work of excellence, the real work of service, and the real work for your business. Building the right team and getting that team doing the right things. And so we find that in building a team, there are some significant challenges and there are some significant opportunities. And actually the difference in your business may not actually be the product or the experience that you offer. It may actually be the engagement that your customer has with your staff. And that engagement with your staff can make all the difference in the world in making a satisfied customer. So for that reason, we're going to talk today about leading change. Now, what does leading change have to do with team building? Well, if you've ever coached a team or run a team, the reason why you're trying to change things is because you're not getting the results you want. You know, you're not winning. You're getting bad reviews. You're not getting the sales you want. You're not getting the revenue you want. But you've got a team, but you're not getting the results that you expect. And so our role as the owner, manager, or leader of the team is to drive that team to success. It is to create an environment for that team to succeed. And that is really the great work. So with that in mind, I want to introduce you to a couple of key concepts that we think can make a big difference for you. Let me first of all invite all of you to request this PowerPoint today. This graph will be there, and I think you'll find this to be very helpful for you. There's a phrase we use quite a bit. It's a quote from Ray Elliott that says, real change happens when you have gentle pressure relentlessly applied. This is a Ray Elliott quote. Real change happens when there is gentle pressure relentlessly applied. And so when you look at the overview here, gentle pressure relentlessly applied is a concept of leading a team in which you get results through a team, whether this is a 5th grade Little League team, or whether this is your sales floor team in a retail environment, or whether this is your team of guides, or whether this is the team of service providers. It is about leading that team successfully. Gentle pressure, relentlessly applied, is the effort that you as the owner or manager or team leader must exert. There are really 4 areas that you must focus on. And these 4 areas really, if you're not getting the results you want, and you must change those efforts to get different results, you've probably got one of these 4 opportunities. The first one on your left, you must get agreement on approach. A lot of us get started working with a team, and we assume that because we hired someone that they agree with us on the way to do things. And I find nothing could usually be further from the truth, which is that people work with us, but they disagree with us on how things should be done. So the first step to success is to get agreement on the approach. We're on the same page as to how we're going to do something. The second opportunity are metrics for assurance. And that is that we are actually tracking with some sort of measurable the efforts of the team. If you do not have metrics that track the performance of the team, well, you're going to have very difficult time effecting change or improving. Thirdly, training and coaching. So once you've got the first two in place, which is an agreement on the approach, and then the metrics to assure we're doing the right thing, the third step is to ensure that people know how to do the work. And that requires training, it requires coaching, it requires your role as a leader to affect and improve the performance of the team. Fourth and finally, you must have a culture of accountability. And that is assuring that we are following up, assuring that we are getting the results and enforcing, as we say in the top, gentle pressure. And we are insistent upon our culture of accountability in which people do the things that they say they will do. Now, as you can see in these four steps, they're all equal. They're all the same size. They all are given the same importance. So any one of these that's missing from the equation is likely to cause you some dissatisfaction, likely to cause you some problem. So let's look at them more closely so that we can understand how to bring these four elements into your efforts at leading change and building your team. The first one is agreement on approach. I want to just say that we believe people are bought in when we hire them. We believe that they're on board. But assuming that there is buy-in is a huge mistake. It's probably the great mistake that we make as owners and as leaders, believing that everybody on the team is on board. So if you're going to create buy-in and make sure there's an agreement on the approach, you must have an open dialogue. We must talk about this together. So you must speak with your team about the approach. You may not like seeing letter C here, but it is a one-on-one conversation in a safe environment in which the person can express to you their concern. I don't want to do it this way. I don't believe in what you've said. I've always done it this way. I find a lot of us hire folks from a previous business, from another company that does something like we do, and we hire them, and we assume that they know what we're doing, and yet when we find trouble, I find that employee says, well, that's not the way we used to do it over at this other store. This is not the way I used to do it at this other business I was in. They did it this way. That's the way I'm used to doing it. That's the way I'm comfortable doing it. That's getting you in trouble because someone else has trained your staff, and that's not effective. So you must have this buy-in conversation. Look at human nature, letter D there. It's part of human nature to want to do things the way that we want to do them. And when an owner or a business leader gives direction and tells us how they want it done, it's just human nature to somewhat push back. So ultimately, when you talk about an agreement on approach, you are talking about an enrollment. And I use that word specifically, enrollment, because it draws the picture of signing up for a course or signing up for a class or enrolling in a university. And enrollment has a lot of different elements to it. Usually there's a sense of spending money, of agreeing to sign in, of becoming part of that team, literally putting on the team colors, wearing and being part of the team mascot, showing up for the team games, because I've signed up to be on this team. I'm now a proud member of this university. I'm a Wildcat. I'm an Eagle. I'm in my neck of the woods, an App State Mountaineer. So enrollment means the team members sign up, they agree to be part of the team, and they agree to the approach. So don't underestimate the value of getting your team on board, because buy-in is crucial to the overall success. So that's the first part. You've got to get agreement on approach. And if you're not getting what you want from your team, take a long, hard look to make sure everyone is agreeing with you on the approach. That's step one. Step two, metrics for assurance. Well, Peter Drucker's famous statement, what gets measured gets managed. There are lots of subversions of this phrase, but ultimately that's what he said. What gets measured gets managed. So if you expect to get results through a team, if you expect to improve performance, if you expect to get better financial results, you must create some degree of a measurement culture. There must be measurements. Now, I think if you've never considered this, this might be a good area for questions, but we want to manage the activity, not the results. Now, when you say, well, what do you mean by that? I mean, results are how someone feels about something. Results are, let's say, for example, if you run a point of sale, you have units per transaction as a measurement. That is, every time the register is opened, every time there's a transaction, how many items are sold. That's a result, the items. But the activity is what it takes as a staff member to generate multiple items sold with better questions, with suggestive selling, by quality visual merchandising. All of those are the activities that drive the result. So you wouldn't say to a staff member, your units per transaction are 2.1. We need to get them up to 4. That's not management. Management is describing the behaviors that get the result. So metrics help you, but you don't measure or manage, you don't manage with your measurements. You use them to help you manage the activity that drives the measurements. And then I'm always a favor of the dashboard approach, which is you don't want to show all of the metrics, all of the outputs of your business. You don't want to take your P&L and make it transparent to the whole business. You don't want to give all of the possible outputs from your register. You want to have a dashboard. So when I sit in my car and I'm driving, I only want to know how fast I'm going, how much gas I have, and if that little red light that says check engine is on. I don't need to see all of the outputs and all of the computer data that can come from my engine. I just need to know what I need to successfully drive the car. So for you, you may not need to look at or allow your staff to see all of your metrics. You just need a dashboard, the key handful of metrics that make the biggest difference in your business. So metrics for assurance is a big part of leading change, because it lets you know how you're doing, but it also shows you when you are improving. And whether you are running track, or whether you are weightlifting, or whether you are trying to lose weight, you are always measuring the results of your efforts. So if you're on a weight loss program, you're checking the scale. How much weight did I lose this week? How much weight have I lost since I started my program? If you're running track, what was my personal best? How do I take a few seconds off that personal best? That's what the focus of the metrics lets you know how you're doing and lets you measure improvement. That's why that's a very important part of leading change and building your team. Thirdly, training and coaching. This component is the skills building of your staff. If your team is on board and you have a metrics mindset in your business, but there are no good results, it is likely a training issue. And this is just skills development, just competency, making sure your people know how to conduct themselves in the work that you've got them doing. And this really is, I think, a key part of your role as a manager, as an owner, and that is that role of player coach. Player coach is not often used these days as a term because it's hard to do. If you think back in the world of sports, it's been a long time since there's been a legitimate player coach. I think the last one that comes to mind is probably Pete Rose. Pete Rose was the manager of the Reds while also playing first base for them. And of course, you can make a lot of jokes right here at this point about the effectiveness of that kind of player coach, but there are some other player coach type folks in the sporting world. I think of Tom Brady. Peyton Manning back in his day, Magic Johnson in his day, where these folks were on the field playing the game, but they had a greater responsibility to the team effort, and so they were coaching the game while also playing the game. And I think most of you on this call would probably say, "Yep, that sounds like me." I've got to be part of the program of my operation, but I'm also got to play the role of coach. Now, if you can't do those two things simultaneously, then and you're hoping and believing that your staff is capable of performing these skills, but they've not been coached, they've not been trained, then your work is going to be increased. Your aggravation, I should say, is going to be increased twofold. So you must be in the coach role, no matter what else you're doing. It is your responsibility to lead your team, coach your team, and be sure you're training your team. The most successful businesses that I know are doing that training prior to game time. They're training and practicing and developing skills before the heat is on. And if you're bringing on new staff in season without giving them adequate time for training, you're just asking for more aggravation than you need. So that training must take place offline as much as possible prior to when the heat is on for them and for you, and of course, mostly for your customers. That brings us to our fourth point, and that is a culture of accountability. The culture of accountability is a way of working in which we are going to follow up. We are going to insist upon results. If you think about our overall topic there, gentle pressure relentlessly applied, that relentlessly is the idea and concept of follow-up. We are relentless in our pursuit of improvement. We are consistent in our follow-up. So I know most of us who've owned businesses, we tend to say that statement there in letter B. Well, they're adults. They should know better. They're adults. They ought to know to take the trash out. They're adults. They should know what to do. And unfortunately, that's just simply not how things work. People do need to be reminded of their tasks. People do need to be shown the results you expect. People do need a culture of accountability, which people do what they are expected and do what they said they would do, because again, they agreed on the approach. That means that you must have an environment that is causal and not hope. Now, I certainly speak about this quite frequently, but it reminds us as managers to have a causal work environment instead of a hope work environment. And again, no, I'm repeating myself here, but causal is that management culture in which we do follow up, that management culture in which we do set expectations, a management culture in which we do define the role. This is something that was in our last webinar. It's something that we believe is the secret between an excellent operation and a poor operation, because too many of us believe in a hope culture. I would hope they would see me doing what I'm doing. I lead by example. I would hope they would see me do these things. And as we've learned, the hope environment does not often get us the results we want. The causal environment works. So there you go, folks. We've got the four elements of leading change: agreement on approach, metrics for assurance, training and coaching, and a culture of accountability. Now, our webinar is titled Leading Change and Team Building. And maybe you thought I was going to talk about ropes courses or group therapy or different songs you could sing around a campfire for team building. I actually believe that when I think about the word team, I think about competing and succeeding. I think about winning. I think about developing skills. I think about pride in a job well done. And so as the team leader, and you're wanting to build a successful, powerful, profitable team that takes care of your customers, gets you financial results, then I think people want to be on a team that wins. And these are the elements of a winning team: an agreement on approach, metrics so we can know how we're doing, training and coaching, a culture of development, and then, of course, mostly a culture of accountability in which people do what they said they were going to do and what we agreed to do in our agreement on approach. So this is hard work. This is not just having matching uniforms. This is not just having meals together. This is about setting expectations. This is about a causal environment. This is about tracking our results, and this is about you. You must do all four of these things. You on this webinar today, it is your responsibility to call that meeting and make sure you have agreement on approach. It's your role, it's your responsibility to begin the difficult task of tracking things and measuring things that you may have never done before. It is your responsibility to be a player coach, to provide training and development and coaching and take the role of the leader who's expecting improvement. And this is the hardest one, step number 4, it is your job to have a culture of accountability, holding people accountable, sitting down, addressing underperformance, addressing poor performance, so that you have created an environment where the winning members of your team are excited to be on their team because the coach knows how to get results. So I think that's what it looks like. I think that's what it means. And of course, for all of us in the middle of all this, we're still trying our best to manage our marketing and our other responsibilities that go with the job. But hey, if you want to lead a winning team, these are the 4 elements that make it happen. So I'll pause right here. I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you, but maybe this opens up some good questions, and perhaps I can maybe create some more clarity that would help. And if so, I'd like to open up the floor to your questions. And Hillary, if you'll lead that, that'd be great.
Yeah, we do have one question already. This comes from Christy. She's wondering if you could give some examples on the metrics that you would use to measure your staff's performance.
Yeah, I thought that might be our first question, and I find that this is I'm glad that you asked that, Christy, because I think that's the hard one. And without knowing your business, in fact, can you just quickly type in the name of your company or the business that you're in, the nature of your business, and Hillary, tell me what that is. I could frame this answer a little bit better, unless you know what it is, Hillary.
Yeah, Sea Kayak Adventures, and it's a guided kayaking tours company.
Okay, great. So the number one most important metric right now that's happening in service is the Net Promoter Score. So I don't know if you're tracking a Net Promoter Score, but a Net Promoter Score is that simple survey that many of you have probably taken in the context of other businesses, where the question is asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend this business to your family or friends? And of course, the Net Promoter Score that you want is a 10. I would be very happy to recommend this business. And so your customer's satisfaction with the experience is the most important metric, and it is calculated as a Net Promoter Score. So I would be tracking that as a company, and I would track that by guide. So the guide, per guide Net Promoter Score is job 1. This one's a surprisingly easy number to capture with getting an email and then sending out a survey and getting that result. So that one's very important. If I'm going to do that, then the folks that capture the customer's information at the point of sale, whether that's online or whether that's in a physical situation, we must gather that customer's email address. So I find this is a surprisingly difficult step for some folks that stand behind the register, and that is called the capture rate, which is another metric. The capture rate as a percentage of the transactions we have and the number of emails that we have. So we must get that email address from that customer in order to send them the survey, in order to get the Net Promoter Score. So the capture rate's important. Next, I'd want to be looking at all of the metrics associated with your marketing. So if you're sending out an email newsletter or some sort of an email blast to communicate your business, what's the open rate and what's the click-through rate of that marketing? So open rate and click-through rate are, I think, vital for knowing how much response. I think I want to look at what percentage of my trips are repeat trips. How many customers are coming back who have been here before? So percentage of my repeat trips, I think, is very important. Now, I don't know if you have any retail associated with your business, whether that be helmets or whether that be sunglasses or whether that be lip balm or whatever. But I think I want to be tracking my add-on sales for every trip. So what's the customer spend per trip? So whatever else they could buy, whether it's food or whether it's, again, a variety of other things they can pick up from you at the desk when they're showing up for the trip. That gets us started. I would invite anyone who's listening who has another metric that they track from that same business to type that in, and we'll share that together.
Thanks, Dan.
You bet.
I have a quick question on the agreement on approach section of this. How much room should a manager or team leader leave for willingness for someone to customize? Is it all about bringing them over to your approach, or is there some balance there?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Hillary. And you see in the icon here is a handshake. So I see that as an equal partnership. And that is, if I have, and I think when I go back to the slide under agreement on approach, I have a one-on-one dialogue as part of the, so a dialogue in a safe environment and one-on-one. I think you see there, dialogue is a two-way exchange. So I do like the idea of the guide or the service provider or whoever's involved to share their preference or their personality, because I think that the number one value we have in this business is authenticity, authenticity and experience. And so I'd like to leave a lot of room for my team to pursue their own personality and be themselves and not be robotic. So all I'm asking for is that guide or that team member to tell me what their approach is, make sure we're on the same page and understand this is this guide's preference. This is this team member's approach. And I can shake hands with them and go, okay, I'm happy with you doing that. We're on the same page that's what you will do. So I do think we leave some room for flexibility and for a person's personality. However, as a business owner, there should be some standards that are not flexible, standards that you absolutely can't allow to be, they must be implemented. You can't allow them to be optional. Those can be from ways you respond on the phone, techniques for ringing up a customer, treatment of the customer during the experience. All those things could be any of those things that are the absolutes. It's okay to lay down those standards as well. Hope that answers your question, Hillary.
Yeah, it does. Thanks, Dan.
You bet.
Does anyone else have any other questions for Dan today?
Well, I certainly have appreciated spending some time with you, and I know that it's hard to get away, but this is big work. This is important work. I think if you'll take the role of owner, the owner role, the manager role, as also a player coach role, and understand your role in leading your team to success, you're gonna have a much better season.
All right, we've got another one here. Give me one sec. I have to read it. Let's see. Are there any other metrics we could use specifically for our instructors? We run wilderness adventure trips for teenagers.
Let's think about that one for a second. For the instructors, I always like to track the test results of the students as a measure of how well the instructor did. Does that make sense, Hillary? As I say it, it's that I'm supervising a team of students and I'm teaching them wilderness skills. So I want a pre-test and then I want a post-test, post the training, to see a measurement improvement and show that the team that I trained improved by a factor of X or a percentage of X based on the work I did with them. So I like to see, just like in the public school system, how teachers are graded and assessed based on the results achieved in the classroom by their students. I'd look for a metric that quantifies the effectiveness of their training with the students that they taught.
Here's another question for you, Dan. For the culture of accountability, do you have any advice for critiquing females compared to males? This Eleni said she's finding that her female staff is not taking criticism as well.
Interesting. That is interesting. And I will tell you that my tendency is to not differentiate in any way from the two genders when I'm sitting down with someone to address critique, offer feedback. I would take a long, hard look at whoever's providing that feedback and ensure that the behavior is the same in both circumstances. I don't know that one type of person or one gender is any more open to, susceptible to feedback and accountability as another. I think this is one of those things that I'd do, going back to the agreement on approach, saying part of my approach is I will be offering feedback. I might start there with both all of my staff members. Listen, I'm going to be sitting down with you monthly or weekly or biweekly, whatever the rate may be, to offer feedback and critique and offer you opportunities for improvement. I do intend to follow up and have metrics to support my feedback. And so I think that if you begin to handle that overly differently, you're probably going to make some mistakes along the way. I'd rather keep them both down the straight line of no differentiation in my approach, other than providing an advanced notice that is something I intend to do as part of my approach to creating the culture of accountability.
Yeah, that's great. All right, we've got another one here. In the training and coaching section, how do you position yourself as a coach but not come across as a micromanager?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. So I think that we do want to have our staff and our team members develop a personality, and we want them to operate seamlessly within their own style. That's, I think, a part of being of having high integrity and being authentic, which is, I think, important part of our service and the experience our customers and guests receive. Micromanagement, as a leader, is it shows typically a lack of trust. I don't trust you, therefore I must control all of your steps. And so that's a management style. I think if you have the metrics for assurance, then you can provide training and then read the measurements, read those metrics. Is your trainee getting you the results you want, even if their style isn't quite your style, or their personality isn't quite your personality, but the results are still the results? That's why metrics for assurance are so important to this overall process for training and for accountability. Because if the student that you've trained, the team member you've trained, is not getting the results, that is clear in the metrics. That's clear. The numbers are showing us that the metrics are below standard. That's why the word transparency sits under there. Hey, I'm not micromanaging you. You're not getting the results, and here are the numbers that prove it. These numbers do not lie. When my son was running track, the coach did not measure his performance through micromanagement, didn't train him based on his personality style, and didn't have to argue with him over the results. The results were on the stopwatch. Here was your time. I have it right in front of me. These are the numbers. They do not lie. And so when you've got an approach to metrics in your business, then that removes the micromanagement concept, because the facts are the facts. That lets you, as a trainer, ensure if they're getting your results, well, then the training has worked. If they're not getting your results, the metrics show it, and you can take action without fearing micromanagement.
Great. Well, that looks like that's all the questions we have today. Dan, we really appreciate having you on the webinar today. It's always wonderful to hear from you. And for everyone who joined, we really appreciate it, and we look forward to offering you more webinars in the future.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great weekend.